Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everything in Racing. Once again, no Ernie, but this time I'm not holding it against him because it is a Wednesday night actually when we're recording this, and it's just a bit tough for Ernie to get out here. I think he lives like an hour and a half away, and driving up here all the time is kind of difficult. But I'm gonna give you a pass on this one. The next one, not so much, buddy. All right, we got a brand new guest on, Paul. Welcome on board, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, like we start every single podcast here, what got you into this world of horrible financial decisions, brother?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to abbreviate it.
We got all the time you want.
So, grew up in central North Carolina.
Okay.
My dad was a dentist, which you go like, okay, what does that have to do? We used to have a big joke about me and nitrous oxide.
I was about to say, easy access to nitrous there.
Yeah, and he didn't even use it in his office. That was the sad thing.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. So my dad grew up in Whiteville, North Carolina, down near Rico Dragway and stuff like that. And when he was in latter high school and then going to Carolina, he actually hooked up with some guys with a shop, and he drove some drag cars for them just because he was good at it. Got into it. And I knew that history, okay? And so he would talk about it and like, oh, fast cars and stuff. Well, when I was probably about middle school, my mother's father had just passed away, and he was a mechanic. He actually owned a tire recapping business, and he was always into NASCAR, big into NASCAR. He had friends that were into fast cars, so I was around cars, stuff. My dad worked on the cars at our house. We had MG midgets. We had I
mean, if you want to work on cars, that's a good one to have because
you got to work.
Always going to be working on it.
You've got to work on it all the time. We had a '66 Galaxy with a 3 on the tree, 289 in it, and I can remember we used it like a truck more than a car. Nothing fast, but we always had cars that my dad worked on, and so it was a sort of passion, I guess, of his to do. But leading up, I got into about middle school, and I got in a lot of trouble in school. A lot of trouble. Yeah, I got in a lot of trouble. As in, I was on the waiting list at Oak Ridge Military Academy because I couldn't keep myself out of trouble. And it was always stupid stuff. I was bored in school.
My dad threatened me with that a couple times.
Yeah, well, I got to spend the weekend up there, and I was on the list. But I was really into dirt bikes.
Okay.
And riding them. I mean, I had a little XL80 that had like 9,200 miles on it. And we're talking about trails behind the house. I mean, just drove them till they fell apart. So I was always into that. I liked speed. Got into middle school, was getting in a lot of trouble. My dad and mom decided to give me something to focus energy on. So we got a 65 Mustang.
Okay.
And started a full restoration. Okay, so I'm just entering high school. I've got this Mustang, 289 4-speed car. We'd looked at like 20 of them before we finally bought this one. Looking for something that had floor pans in it still, because most of those back then didn't have floor pans in them.
I've got one back there that doesn't have floor pans in it.
Yeah, they just sit around and they just disappear, dissolve in front of the thin air.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got that. Redid everything. I mean, every nut, bolt, everything. And had some friends that had fast cars. And honestly, the reason I ended up with a Mustang was because everybody had a Camaro. In my high school, everybody had a Camaro, and Fords were slow. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter what you drive. I mean, you can make any of them fast,
Yeah.
And so I had that. So kept going on. Little things started out with a 289, then built a 302, then built a 351. Just kept getting little more and little more.
Replacement for displacement.
That's right. No big strokers back then. This is long before you could buy stroker kits in the mail.
Yeah.
I mean, the first stroker I ever did was a 400M crank, turned into a 351. I mean, that's the way we used to do it. You didn't have aftermarket stuff like that. If it was so expensive, we couldn't afford it. But kept doing that. When I was in college, I got into racing motorcycles, not off-road motorcycles, GSXRs, 1100s. I had a bunch of them, a bunch of different ones, and I did work for other people. Just kept getting more and more into it. So I was racing both cars and motorcycles, and went to NC State. I got a mechanical and textile engineering degrees.
Nice.
And was dating a young lady at the time who really didn't find any use in racing. It wasn't her cup of tea, even though she would go with me to Myrtle Beach. I rode motorcycles for people. So we'd go down there and, yes, street racing happened at the airport back then. We'd go down there.
Because Mexico's right around the corner, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's really close to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, and so you may not know this, but at the time, North Carolina has always had prearranged racing laws on the books. South Carolina did not.
Okay.
So they did not have a prearranged racing law. So people would leave Rockingham Dragway and cross the border and race on the street because all the cops could do was give you a careless and reckless or a speeding ticket. They could not get you for street racing back then.
Have you been to Mustang Week at all over the last couple of years?
I try to avoid it because I don't want to get run over on the curb.
it's the cops have no chill.
Oh, no.
And like we had someone on.
They have an exhibition of speed ticket.
Yes, they do. We had someone on last week that goes down to Mustang Week every year, and like we did admit, like, yes, it's what the cops are doing is enforcing the laws that already exist. Like, I agree 100%. We probably shouldn't be driving that fast. Cam Perry, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to think of it in my brain. As of recording this today, his episode will drop tomorrow. Okay. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah.
You know, post. You know, because that's how time works.
Yeah.
It's weird. But yeah, it's. I love hearing people complain about, the cops have no chill. They're pulling us over for doing burnouts in the street. Like, did you listen to the sentence you just said?
Yeah. Well, so yeah. But that's the way things worked. So started trying to get out of racing. I was literally making an effort. Hey, I'm going to be an engineer. I got to be an upstanding citizen. I can't be into these race cars, blah, blah, blah. Went to the University of Michigan in graduate school. Okay. I actually have a master's in engine design. Okay. Was up there and was phasing out of racing, and we parted ways. She and I parted ways. And then I'm in a state that I don't really know that well, but I know racing. And so I got full bore.
If there's anywhere you can go make friends, it's at the racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people in the parks downtown Detroit with wheels 4 foot in the air. So there's a lot of good stories about Detroit and being in that area. But one of my first experiences in Michigan was I met a guy at a tire store. He saw my Mustang. Oh, you like racing? Yeah, kind of into this thing, Well, you need to go to Mile in Michigan. Okay. And so I didn't know him, but he was telling me where it was down 23, get on Old Plank Road, come up, blah, blah, blah. So I look at a map. We used to use maps, So I look at the map and I go,
what's that?
Yeah, it's
like Google Maps or
no. This is a paper one. And so I get the map out and I see Milan. Milan is Milan. Okay. Everywhere in the world, that's Milan.
Yeah, except for there, it's Milan.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
So I go, that guy didn't know how to pronounce, He must not be from around here, right?
No, he is.
Yeah. I head down Friday night to go at the test and tune and drive down there on 23, take Old Plank Road, go out. Oh, there's Milan Dragway. And so I pull up the door and the young lady meets me. She goes, "Welcome to Milan Dragway." And I found out that in that part of the world, they call it Milan.
It's Milan.
Yep. And it's so funny because I ended up meeting a partner in racing, Jeff Payne or Tom Payne, depending on how he goes by. He does a lot of the super tuning now. So he was a big in NMRA. He won a couple of national championships in Pure Street and some other classes. He and I actually ended up meeting there.
Nice.
And he was in school at GMI at the time. Now it's Kettering University, but GMI, which is General Motors Institute. And he had a Camaro, and I had my old Mustang, and literally left the track that night and spent until about 4 o'clock in the morning on the streets of Detroit.
Nice.
Riding around. And so we hit it off, and over the next 8 or 9 months, we built a Mustang to run world's fastest street car shootouts.
Okay.
And no girlfriend who doesn't like racing. And he and I went full bore, national series. Worst thing ever in the world, went to the first national event and won.
Oh, that's going to go straight to your head.
Yeah. That's like sticking a 6-inch needle all the way in your arm, man. It's done. And so got a big head, was in Drag Racing Illustrated, full, spread on us. Here's 2 college kids just went out.
Rookie of the year.
Just, 2 kids in college just go out there and wax everybody. Set a national record and win the race. And so I would say that was probably the hook that really sunk deep. And started there, and have been at it ever since. Sometimes backed off a little bit when I had kids were young. And was an engineering manager at Cummins for about 20 years, and sort of backed out of it a little bit, helped just selective people. And right at 2.5, 3 years ago, had all I could of corporate America, and said, you know what, I got a chassis dyno, I got a shop at my house, and I'm going to go absolute full bore at this. And so but I've never stopped racing. First time down drag strip was probably about 87, 88. And I've probably never gone more than a month or two without being at a drag strip, either helping or tuning or driving or doing all of the above. So,
I mean, one of the main things that we've kind of come back to a couple times on the podcast with different guests is the, like, when kids happen, it slows down. I don't know if it should stop all the way, right? Like
it should take you out of the seat.
It should take you out of the seat for a while, or you need to go on the flip side, and like your safety needs to go just through the roof, in my opinion.
I would argue that even with safety, I mean, even with the ultimate safety, it depends on what class you're running. Now, you're out there running a 7.0 bracket car. Okay, man, I got you. You stay in the seat. When you're running 420 cars on small tires, you really need to consider what's going to happen. I mean, I had it's literally top 10 worst door slammer wrecks ever. And my kids were young. And I mean, I barreled one at over 200 miles an hour. And when I came home with 13 broken bones in my feet, my wife probably could have just shot lasers out of her eyes and scolded me right there, because the reality was it was stupid. Why was I in the seat of that car when there's other people who can drive it and don't have to be the breadwinner, don't have to be there to raise them and stuff? And so I think that, my advice to anybody in that is, hey, it's going to happen like that. They're going to be born and they're going to be 14 or 15 years old before you can bat an eye. And you can still be around racing, but it's a real thing. The reality is that a lot of these cars, especially some of the ones you see at some of the test and tune, really shouldn't be going as fast as they are. And it's not necessarily your car's the problem.
It's their
car.
When it's this goes back to another thing I go back on is the no time stuff, and then the outlaw tracks, right? Yeah. So, like, obviously where I met you was Galot, right? And Galot is a sanctioned track.
Yeah, it's a top anywhere in the world.
Yep.
And it's a top couple in North Carolina.
Yeah. Now, their prep could use a little bit of work. Over the last 2 years, it's been kind of...
and conditions for the weather, it's always playing with them.
And that stuff, but, like, the facilities are great. And
the safety's great.
Like, I had them pull me aside. When their number for no cage in the car is 630, right? The moment you run a 630 anything, you're done, right? Until you have a cage in that car, right? And that's how I found out that was the number, because I ran that number and the guy wouldn't give me my tech card. And he goes, hey, you need to have a cage in this car, and I don't want to see you again tonight. Yep. Like, I better not see you again. And I'm like, yeah. Got the message. We're going to load her up.
Because it's really 740.
Yeah.
749 is the real number. But anyway.
Well, they're...
Yeah, they let it go.
Yeah, well, and mine's a more modern car. I know NHRA changed their rules for the more modern cars because all the airbags and stuff like that. Of course, the car didn't have any airbags.
That's an unmodified trim, by the way.
It's unmodified trim. It did that. It's totally safe.
Well, NHRA rule is the car can't be modified.
Yeah.
And do that. Well, they don't do that if they're not modified.
They don't do that if they're not modified, yeah. I see guys driving cars that are way too fast, and they, of course, where they hide behind is, well, I'm a no-time car. I'm a no-time car. Nobody knows how fast I'm going, and I'm not really going as fast as you think I am. I'm like, okay, first of all, I can film you, go down there and go, that's when the light went green, that's when your light came on. Within a tenth, I can get or less.
And if you got an iPhone, you can back it up by milliseconds.
Yeah, I mean, I was being a bit generous, right? But I'd be like, I can tell, just standing there, I can tell the difference between a 7-second pass, a 6-second pass, a 5-second pass, and a 4-second pass. Like, it's pretty darn
You can tell the difference
easy
between
to
a
tell.
520 and a 490.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can stand there and go, yeah,
Yeah, you were at that 60 real fast.
yeah, you got to the 60 real fast. You got, that was the fastest 10-second pass I've ever seen. And or they just go to outlaw tracks that just don't do the safety stuff, and then you see guys get hurt, and they're like, I mean, it's not the track's fault, but
It's not. No.
It's ultimately it's the driver's fault because that's your car, that's your decision, you're the one who went down there. Where I think all tracks need to do better across the board is having the safety crews on hand.
Oh, yes.
Galot is great as far as that goes. The ambulance is right there.
The guy's in a fire suit the whole night. He's
Yep.
out there. I mean, anytime we've brushed a wall or had a customer brush the wall, he's the first one there in the truck. He's got his suit on. He's ready to go.
Yep.
Rockinham's the same way.
Yeah, Rockingham's the same way. But then there's other tracks you go out to where it could be minutes before anybody could get to you.
I've been at a track in North Carolina where the fire truck wouldn't crank. And the car was on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that's a bit of the track, but that's also, again, you as the driver.
You chose to go to there.
Is that track safe enough for this car?
I've got a lot of very, I'll call them friends that run a lot of the small tire, no tire races. And I've had conversations with numerous of them that are running at a guardrail track. I'm like, you're running 185 miles an hour with a Jersey barrier next to your car. It's going to open that thing up and go right through that chromoly cage like it wasn't even there.
Yeah, like a can opener.
Yeah. And I said, this shouldn't be happening. I mean, and to me, I understand why the tracks want the crowd. I don't understand why the racers, I mean, there's a speed for each one of those tracks. And it's really the mile an hour is more of a problem than the ET because the mile an hour is energy.
Yeah. Well, and there were some tracks that were like when they were made, they were not made for radials.
Oh.
Right? They just weren't. Kinston is a great example. Right? I've been down that track a lot of times. I can tell you, I'm probably not going to be going down that track again because of where we're going with the car.
That's right.
Right? But it was like, I don't know if you know Jason Tyson.
Jason's a dear friend of mine, and I was the one that walked with his wife down the track when he hit.
That was a hard hit.
That was a really hard hit.
And it was, I think it opened up a lot of our eyes going, ooh.
It did, but it's wearing off. And I have to say that because if you look at what happened at the end of the year and some of the guys who wrecked at some of the tracks they're at, and they're running the kind of speeds at the tracks that they shouldn't be doing. And, the last thing somebody wants to do is have to go to a funeral.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that in my years of racing, because I'm 51 now and say 16, so a lot of years, I've gone to funerals for racers. Okay. I knew Steve Griebeck real well. And then when those accidents happen, it leaves a mark. And the reality is that you would think that you'll never forget it. But I can tell you that when money comes up, and when I say that, if a track, any track that really shouldn't be hosting a race like that says, we're going to pay $10,000 to win. All of a sudden, safety to a lot of people becomes secondary for some reason. And be honest with you, they're risking way more than 10 grand.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got way more than 10 grand wrapped in these cars, but like just the car part of it, we got way more than that. And then like, let's say you get injured, like you break your foot and you got to sit out of work for a couple months, right? That's way more than 10 grand.
Yeah. And I've always been lucky until I've started the full race stuff. I was always lucky because I worked a corporate job. So as an engineer, I didn't have to be out doing stuff. So if something like that happened, honestly, I could still go to work and stuff like that. But as a plumber or as a guy who works in a shop or as a guy who's a mechanic, no, you're out.
Yeah.
And unless you've got really good insurance that out of work insurance, you're going to be SOL.
Yeah.
And the reality is that that's why you have to, I will go overboard. I get jumped by some of my pro friends because I see some of the cars I drive and they're like, get out of that car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, man, I'm not driving as fast. Get out of that car. That car is not where it needs to be for the amount of power that it has. And, I've stepped out of a few of them now because I've seen some people wad them up. But I drive probably more cars in a year than I have probably any recollection of how many cars I drive. I mean, I've driven up to 6 or 7 cars on a Thursday night at Galot. Different cars.
If you need to share any, let me know, because man, I'm sitting on the sidelines, getting antsy, man. I need to get back in the driver's seat bad.
One of my buddies told me that I'm the official test dummy of new cars. And I was like, well, that's part of it. I do think that it's a feel thing in a lot of the because I've kept cars off the wall, sometimes by the grace of God, sometimes just because a lot of experience said, hey, something's going wrong.
Yep.
And the more you drive, the luckier you get, because you just feel more and more. But we're very fortunate in North Carolina, extremely fortunate the tracks we have.
Oh yeah.
And why people go and risk life, vehicles, everything else at some of these tracks is beyond me. I mean, I go and tune at some of these tracks, and I'm like, literally, there's nothing to keep this car from going into the crowd. Nothing, you know. And I got news for you. Those people out there, I know they sign waivers and everything else, but if they look at you and you have a lot of money and an accident goes on, trust me,
they're coming
at you.
Yeah. There's a couple tracks I still haven't, or there's a lot of tracks I still haven't been to. I've been to a couple tracks, would be the best way to put it. So like, I guess if I can just ask some questions, like where would Rico fall as far as that goes?
So actually what's funny about Rico is the facilities and where it's at are the biggest problem. Yeah. Okay. When I say that, the actual traction at the track, I've actually had some grudge cars. We ran some pretty strong numbers down there, especially in the 60-footer and stuff, but it's hit or miss. When I say that, it's in a swamp. Okay. So it's like a lot of tracks.
So your DA is going to be kind of...
Well, so what happens, especially depending on the time of the year, let's go back to like October. You've been hot during the day, 72, 73 degrees. It's going to drop down to, say, 50 at night. When you're in the swamps, all right, any of the tracks, Outer Banks, Rico. Now, Outer Banks is a nice facility, okay? But when they're that low and close to sea level and the water table's that high, they're going to pull water through the concrete. It's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. The track can't help it. The atmosphere is going to do what it's going to do, and it pulls water up. And it also just condensation drops from the top. And when it does, those tracks are going to get greasy. Tracks like Rico don't have scrapers and scrubbers and all that stuff. So what happens is over time, they'll get out there with a tractor blade and pull it down and then get it really glued up. And the next thing you know, you've got rubber building up. You got slick cars and radial cars and stuff like that. And so you really got to watch those kind of tracks. Rico, in my opinion, is a 550 track. I think you're fine in 550s. I've seen a lot of passes there. I think their guardrails and stuff are good enough for that. Yeah. They have the kind of traction. I personally think when you get down in the 4s there, that you're really you're beyond where you really should be. On big tires, you may be able to go that a little better, but that track, just understand, where's the nearest hospital?
I don't know.
Okay. It's Weifel. It's right around the corner, but it's, you're not near a major trauma center. Okay. Galot, your air flight to Raleigh, probably 20 minutes.
Yep.
Right. And you got plenty of trauma centers. I mean, you got Raleigh, you got Durham, you got Chapel Hill, you got them all right here. Okay. Piedmont's in a good spot for that. I mean, you're going to air flight anybody. Don't anybody tell you. Anytime there's a major accident,
you're going to be life flighted out of there.
But in this, because you don't have to worry about traffic, right? That's why. But you still got to say is where is the nearest one and how long is it going to take them to get to you, and then you get back. Okay. But the reality is that when you've got the tracks you've got in North Carolina, I mean, Rockingham is phenomenal now.
I've heard since they did the
grinding,
advanced
concrete finishing down in Southern Pines did that. I know the guy who owns I've done some work for him. Dude, that's like 10,000ths from start to finish flat. That thing is like a sheet of glass.
We had Dan Van Horn on here, and that was actually one of my questions. So it was like right when they were doing that. So like the track, they had reconcreted it,
Oh,
and
it's horrible.
it was horrible.
No, it was horrible.
Yeah, and so like that was one of my direct questions to him. I was like, hey man, I'm glad you guys took over. You guys are making the necessary updates that the track needed.
Yeah,
this
nice
is
bar.
This is one of the things that you guys did, and it hasn't turned out. Why? And he told me straight up, this is why. This is why. We only had so much money to do it. We chose to do it this way, and it didn't turn out.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing to correct it.
Yep. And I'm telling you right now, man, I've been down there with some of Ducks races, King of Thrones stuff. Been down there testing. We've tested down there about 4 times this year on Sundays. That track, once they got it ground, I mean, it literally, when they glue it up, now the last time we were down there, the weather got us. But when they glued that thing up, man, I mean, I had a Pro 275 car we were down there helping. I mean, 9-7 short times. Nice. I mean, so it's that track, and it's flat. So once you leave, there's no bump to deal with. There's nothing. I mean, so it's going to be really interesting. The only problem with that track really in the long term is the shutdown area. Not that it's a bad shutdown area. It's downhill.
Yeah.
And so when you get 240 mile an hour cars.
Have you ever been down there to see the number at the end of it?
What do you mean?
Well, that track used to be a runway.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It used to be an airfield.
No, it still is.
The number is still down there.
So that's from NASCAR days. So so they would fly and land everybody over there.
Yeah.
And then try. So I've actually been at that track at the one of the things that sort of really got me hooked into racing when I was young. They used to have the Winston Invitational. Yep. That was at Rockingham, and so I went to that every year as a kid.
I can't wait till next year. They're bringing NASCAR back there, man.
Yeah. I had some friends that actually qualified at a race back when I was in high school. We helped them work on the car, and they went down and qualified because back in NASCAR in those days, you actually physically, anybody could qualify. You go down there, your car teched, you got a chance to qualify. They put Kyle Petty on the trailer with a bunch of guys in a barn.
Wow.
That was fun. And by the way, when you're in that track, if you have a problem with your car, you got to stay the whole race. Most NASCARs are that way. Nice. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
But they used to fly in over there. But I was at the Winston Invitational, and Coletta, I think it was Coletta, that landed the airplane. They stopped everything. He landed the airplane, and then taxied, set it down at the end of the runway. It was in the morning. They put the cones back up and raced.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's. But it's always been that way. I mean, ever since I was a young kid, because I'm from Siler City, so Rockingham's only 45 minutes away. So
I thought that was super cool. That the numbers are still there. It's still technically is still.
You can look at it on flight maps. Yeah, you can look at it on flight maps. Yeah.
I know when they redid the timing system, the guy flew in, he landed on the drag strip, did everything he's got to do, and took right back off again.
Most quarter mile tracks in the United States have pretty much all been used as runways at one time. Because understand, go back in history, most of your early paved drag strips were airstrips.
Yeah,
they used airstrips as drag strips, not the other way around.
Well, it's why they have a whole bunch of them out in
California,
but also
Southern.
in the UK.
Yeah.
Because like they built all of those runways during World War II because they needed them, right? And then of course as soon as World War II is over, they don't need them.
That's right.
So all of them turned into racetracks. My team, we're talking because that's where I blew up. I blew up at Rockingham, right? And so we were kind of discussing it of like, okay, when we get the car back together and she's running, where are we going to go run first? Are we going to go to Galat because it is right around the corner here, or are we going to go back to Rockingham because that track owes me one?
So, and I deal with this literally on a daily basis with customers. I always say that the first time out with a car is going to be a 60-footer. Until we get that right. Then we're going to go 330. We're going to look at the data, look at the plugs, and then we're going to go. Because if you do that, most of the time you'll actually have an engine and transmission and stuff to go again. And distance from your home base is the number one consideration in that.
Yeah.
I mean, because the reality is that, and Rockingham's not far for you, but
it's about an hour and 10, hour and 15-ish. Yeah.
And Galat's what, 35?
At most.
Yeah. So to me, it's the odds of you taking a car out the first time and not having a problem are not good.
Are very low.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing to explain to somebody. Yes, you've spent $150,000 putting a car together. You've been on the dyno, you've done all this, and we're going to go to the track, and you're going to go to spool it the first time and let go of the button, and something's going to break.
Yep.
And don't be 3 hours from home.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I drove all the way to Rockingham earlier this year. I just put a brand new set of slicks on a customer's car.
Mm-hmm.
Brand new set of slicks and tubes. And I drive down to Rockingham, hour and 45 minutes for me. And I drive down to Rockingham, and we drop the door, and one of them's flat. And you don't pick up a slick tube at the nearest corner store.
Yeah.
So Carl down there, he knows, he found a tube for me. So we were able to unmount it, put a tube in it and stuff, and we were able to make a couple half shakedown cars. But the reality is that's going to happen when you bring a new car out.
That is the nice part about having double bead lock wheels, at least, is that
we could do it at the track.
You can do it at the track. You have to break that bead, and oh man.
Well, yeah, you I don't care who you think you are. You start trying to break beads, because some guys carry bead breakers for like tractor trailers. Mm-hmm. You'll destroy a rim.
Yeah,
you'll destroy a rim.
I just got my first set of double bead locks, and I was like, "Ooh, they're so pretty. I like these so much."
All I can tell you is go to Harbor Freight and grab a couple of those real cheap moving blankets. Mm-hmm. So every time you pull them off, that you can lay them on those, because otherwise you will destroy the bead on it. Yeah.
Yeah. But so what is your current car that you actually drive?
Oh wow, I drive a couple grudge cars.
Okay.
For people, Fred Wright has a car called Vendetta. Okay. That I'm driving for him. The drag and drive car, David Armentrout, I'm the other driver for it. I'll do all the testing on it, 100% of the testing. I'll go and do all that over the winter. We got a race the end of January. I'll be the co-driver. When I say co-driver, I'll make passes, he'll make passes. Mm-hmm. There's a whole thing we're trying to get in the 200 club for drag and drive, which means you completed an event but went over 200.
Nice.
Handful of people in the world in that. And I'm in the 200 club at Bonneville. I land speed race, so it'd be unique. Right now, the only person I know that's in both of those is Alex Taylor. Yeah, and I know her very well, and her boyfriend also, or fiance, I should say. But yeah, she's the only person I know that's in both of those, and she just got in the Bonneville 2 Club in August at Bonneville. Nice. We were out there.
I like Alex Taylor. Her and her dad work so hard on that car.
Yeah, and that's one thing at drag and drive. So David Armentrout and I do the drag and drive in the 67 Chevy. It stays at my shop. When it's been anything done to it, it stays down here. Mm-hmm. But Joe Schott does the chassis. I do all the electronics. I do all the tuning. And David owns it. Drag and drive is, think of the worst weekend you've ever had at the track, and do that for a week.
Yep.
Okay. It is literally, you've got to have somebody that's like a MacGyver on the team. They got to be able to fix anything. You've got to somehow work with somebody that you don't want to kill. I have seen people literally, come to fist blows because they're riding in the car together. For whatever reason, David and I just mesh absolutely like we never have been at each other at all. We've had some horrible, horrible things happening with the car. Obviously you can point fingers at people and stuff like that, but we just stay.
I've heard day 3 is the hardest day. If it's a 5-day event, it's generally that middle day that's like.
I would say that it's the day that you have problems that are like, will you be able to make a run? Because essentially in drag and drive, if you take a 20, which is like you didn't get to make it, you just stage and roll back or something like that, you're pretty much out of the competition.
Yep.
So are you the kind of person that says, I'm done, I'm out of here, so just stop? Or are you the kind of person that goes, we took a 20, but we're going to go out there and prove to the world we can do it? Me personally, I'm the kind of person that says, if you're making decent passes, stay in. But when you take a 20, why are you going to go out and tear your stuff up? And I don't understand that. I see guys do it, and more power to them. But I'm the kind of person that goes, listen, we're here to stand on that podium. We're here to get one of those jackets. We're here to get the trophy. We want to win a class. We want to be, in the top 3 in the class. So you're taking a 20. This past drag week, we went out first day. We had an issue. We went out first day. But Alex and Bryant and all those, I mean, they were dogfight. I mean, absolute dogfight to the last second. I mean, Bryant burned a head and they welded it, machined it, put it back on the car and drove, and Brian Robbins, which is his secondary guy, the guy that rides with him. I mean, I've known those guys forever. And Brian, he's from Michigan and stuff. I mean, just the pure fortitude to stay with it, to do that. I mean, think about what, if you had your engine hurt. Mm-hmm. So like, how long did it take to get the heads fixed?
I mean,
months.
Yeah. I mean,
weeks to months, right?
Yeah. I had to get new heads.
Yeah.
I had to,
So we're talking about somebody taking a head that literally you could see the piston through the side of the head. Mm-hmm. I mean, it torched the end out of the head. Mm-hmm. They have made their pass. They drive it back, just spitting stuff out the sides, right? Because they got to drive it back. You can't tow back.
Yep.
Get there, turn in their time slip, drive over, or push it over actually, to a shelter at the track. Mm-hmm. Get permission to stay there. Get the head off, have somebody take them to a shop, weld it up, remachine it, redo the valve job, fix all the stuff, come back, put it together. You're in the middle of the night somewhere. Now you got to drive another 250 miles in a car that's not exactly AC and nav system.
I've heard that's the hardest part on the cars is the drive, right?
It's the hardest thing on them.
Like, obviously going down the track is always going to be hard on a car, right? Because that's
when you're going to break it.
That's where you're going to break it. But like, when we build these cars, we don't build them for sustained 60 miles an hour on the highway, going back and forth on the road, start, stop, start, stop, start.
I'll tell you this: there's a lot of things on the cars that a lot of cars have, like gear vendors, right? I mean, Rick at Gear Vendors. I mean, I can't say enough. We know the guy is great. They service their product stuff. They put things on like that to help you with the speed on the highway, keep the RPMs down. But see, these motors don't like to be low RPM. Okay, so understand when we say low RPM, we're trying to keep them somewhere. I'm trying to keep our engine somewhere like 2,200 to 3,000. Okay, that's where it's happy. That motor doesn't want to be loaded at 1,200.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, you're talking to 800, 900 lift cam, in a big 540 cubic inch big block Chevy with twin turbos. It's unhappy at 1,300. Okay, when I say it's unhappy, it's eating its own exhaust, right? So there's things like that they're dealing with. So you get a gear vendors and stuff in there to knock them down. Rear gear, some people do. Some people put taller tires on them.
Bigger tires.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things people do. We're very fortunate because I do 100% of the street drive, 100%. Started out when we first got in this years ago, he'd drive one day, I'd drive one day. We do that. We've gotten now where I do the street driving. He drives at the racetrack. I do some of that too, but I do 100% of street driving because honestly, that's when you start seeing things with like oil pressure and things like that. And you really need to be attentive because you can't put safeties in for all that. And so you're looking for those, but his car drives incredibly well on the street. I have been in other cars. I wouldn't want to go 1,200 miles in a lot of those cars. I wouldn't want to do 12 miles in some of those cars.
I think probably the worst one I saw was Cletus and Leroy because it's just a cage. That's all. It's just a cage with 2 seats thrown in it.
Yeah.
That looked miserable.
Yeah. The most miserable one that I ever saw was a 32 Roadster. And the passenger, they took it was a old super gas car. So they take the tonneau cover off and they put like a jump seat to ride. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. They didn't make it very far.
No.
But
now, have you done like Sick Week?
Oh yeah.
What do you think about a small tire car beating a big tire car last year?
So it's a big thing because we're a radial car. Now we run a 315 on that car. We can run a 275, but we run a 315 in our class. So Devin, I know very well. I think the world of Devin. He does great work on everything he does, and he's a great reference. And we'll bounce stuff off of each other. He's also into guns, which is fun.
I love guns.
Yeah. And a lot of racers are, by the way.
Yeah, I might have to bleep that so YouTube doesn't, take this video down.
That's quite all right.
Yeah.
So Sick Week is the only place where a radial car can really compete in a drag and drive. Okay. Tom has a lane for slicks and has a lane for radials. And so you can actually do it. Drag Week, we made the fastest pass ever in Drag Week at a 680.
Mm.
Understand, with that car, I was 5 numbers off in the 60 footer because the track would not handle what we could do at a regular track.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can go 110, 112, and we're going to be 119s because that's all the track will take. So you're not going to run they don't do, so far Hot Rod has not.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm sitting here in one of their shirts. I'd like to see them step up and prep a lane for us on radials.
Yeah.
I think that Tom and Sick Week are going to push that.
I think that's really what got Jeff Lutz, though, was because it's a little bit more radial prep than slick prep. It was just shaking the crap out of his car.
Yeah, so it's,
which I was happy to see Jeff Lutz come back to it because that's where he got his
start.
He started there, and then he went to No Prep Games, and look, the dude's cool. Like, everyone I've talked to has never said a bad word about him.
I just know him from at Sick Week and stuff like that. I'm not, never had a lot of business with him or anything, but he was nothing but nice to us. He didn't do anything. But yeah, the Sick Week, to me, we could get into a lot of things about racing, but Sick Week has done something for the spectators, because most drag and drive events are horrible for spectators. Mm-hmm. It's just not a spectator sport. Tom has done a lot to have the Sick Ward, have guys following it, help with the food and stuff like that. So to me, it helps bring a whole different crowd. So people are taking a vacation and watching us for a week.
Yeah.
And that's fun. I mean, you get to meet, fans.
I always enjoy more racing in front of a crowd than racing in front of empty stands,
Yeah. Right now, the no time and the grudge scene is, I don't know how it's sustaining, because there's no fan base. Mm-hmm. I could go into why I think that is. I think they overcharge at the gate. I think they overcharge for pretty much everything they do. I think that
I think part of the problem is they don't advertise it either. Like so I'm going to use Galat as our example here. PDRA, they advertise the crap out of that thing, right? It's everywhere on Facebook, it's everywhere on Instagram. They do everything they can to say, here's this event, come on out, right? And then they'll have bracket race, of course, which spectators don't show up for bracket racing, but you can buy back in, you can double enter, and so the track's going to make its money. Cool, great for that, right? But
and
then
they're not big payouts either.
They're not big payouts.
Yeah.
They look like big payouts to me. But I'm used to running for like $200.
Yeah.
But then you'll have like one of their 28s races. No advertising, one post about it on Facebook. Here's what it is. Here's what we're doing. So
I would argue that that's not really Galat's job, okay? Because the PDRA does the advertising. So Galat, I know they have put on some of their own races, but a lot of stuff like the North-South or any of the Braxton, that's not the track's duty.
Yeah.
That's the promoters.
Yeah, and that's where, Braxton is a great example, right? I'm always like, Braxton, you can't just put it out on the 252 Facebook page and expect people to just find it.
Yeah.
Right? That's like, you need to be putting out flyers at your local Advance Auto in O'Reilly.
I want to put on a race so bad right now, and I've talked to someone again this week about putting on a race, and the reason why is because I know that what racers want to race for money, but they also want to race for fans.
Yep.
Okay? So I go down to Jacksonville the other week, and JJ's down there, right? A lot of people down there. Why? Because JJ's there.
Because JJ's there.
You know how many of his cars got by first round?
None.
0.
Yep.
Okay. We tried calling them out. Jody called out one stuff. Race is done. I mean, they're out. Every one of the fans was hanging out over there. Right now, the racers aren't. We're like, who's that guy? We don't care, Yeah. But the reality is that we've lost something in racing. So when I ran the world's fastest street car, NSCA and NMCA, over the years, we went back to Atlanta a lot. We went down to all the way to Bowling Green. I got to see kids. They're like 8 years old, 9 years old. We put them in the car, right? Guess what I saw the next year? I saw a 9 or 10-year-old. Guess what I saw the year after that? 10 or 11-year-old.
Yep.
They kept coming back. I'm sure I stuck a couple needles in those kids' arms and made them into racing.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what we're missing right now is most of the racers don't feel it's their job to help get people there.
Yeah.
Now, And so to me, I'd like to put something on to the racers of, let's put a race together. Y'all get 25% of the gate.
Yeah.
Y'all get 25% of the gate. Get people here. But the reality is that that's how, you've got to have people in those stands to pay for that money. 25% of the gate could be $500 or it could be $50,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many people do y'all want to bring in here?
Yeah, because like a place like Goliath, you can pack that out.
Oh, you could easily bring 40,000 people.
Yeah.
Now, again, I think the other problem is that promoters, as they see lower numbers, want to charge more per person.
Yep.
My personal belief is, I don't care where the economy is, I don't want to get into that whole debate, but I watched ADRL give away tickets. Give away tickets. They were all free. You could get them at every parts store in North Carolina when they were coming. They charged $20 for park a car. 100 people in your cars or one person in your cars, $20 to park a car. They made millions. Millions. Okay? The reality is that $20 at the gate, and you got 2 kids and your wife or girlfriend, whatever you got, you're almost $100 getting the gate. Okay? No coolers allowed. Nothing, the reality is that, the shirts, $30 a shirt, stuff like that. Man, people aren't going to spend that kind of money.
No.
But if you say, hey, everybody under 13's free, $5 a head or, $20 to park or something like that, you may go from 800 to 1,000 people attending to 18,000 people attending.
Yep.
Doesn't take a lot of math to figure out that you're going to make more money with 18,000 people there, because you should be getting a part of the food and part of the, T-shirt sales and stuff like that. The other thing that I don't see a lot anymore is people don't have T-shirts.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know in Drag and Drive, I've got friends that are making $1,200 a track selling T-shirts. They got 2 totes of T-shirts. And the reality is that people come up and give them $20 for a shirt. Well, it doesn't take a whole long to get $1,200 worth of shirts. Yeah. 60 shirts, boom, and that's where, it helps the drivers out. They get a fan base, people get to see your shirt at Walmart. I guarantee you, I've been around you enough to know, you see somebody with a Jason Tyson shirt on, you, oh, Jason.
I mean, Cletus McFarland is a great example. He has got shirts galore, and he keeps them coming.
Yep,
right?
I saw yours on earlier.
Yeah. I love that dude. He's hilarious. I love what he's done.
Oh, see, I'm one of those ones that I'm not an anti-YouTuber. Yep. I'm not, because I personally think that they have helped our sport in a generation that doesn't get out.
Yep.
And so the kid that didn't grow up riding dirt bikes and 2-strokes and, skinning himself up on skateboards and stuff like that, sitting in front of a computer, now goes, wow, that looks interesting.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I would honestly say Cletus is part of the reason I got into racing.
Oh.
Right? I had influences in my life as well that were horrible influences, and then said, hey, just come over to this YouTuber thing, right? And so my first ever drag race I went to was at Galot. It was the YouTube call out. Back when Street Speed 717 and Guitar Mageddon Z01 and It's Just a 6, right? Were hosting a big thing out there, right? And that was the first one I ever saw. Right. And I was hooked. And Cletus came out there as well. I think he brought Leroy. Right. And I was like, what is this ridiculous golf cart looking Corvette thing? Right. So I started watching his videos, and I was like, I need to get into this. Let
me be financially irresponsible and have fun.
Financially irresponsible, but like, what was funny though was like that was before I met my wife, and all that. And so when I did meet her and I started dating, I told her, I was like, look, just so you understand, this is part of the package deal, right? So I was like, I'm not gonna be chasing other women. I'm gonna always bring my paycheck home. I'm not gonna become an alcoholic. I'm not gonna do drugs. This is my thing. So as long as
everyone has a vice,
we don't go after this thing, we're gonna be fine.
So my wife and I, a few years back, talking about like where we are in life and stuff, and I told her, I said, there's 2 things that I want to do. Right? We were doing some financial stuff, financial piece. Dave Ramsey, incredible program. If you don't know about it, you should really look into it.
My wife and I are 1 month away from finishing step 2.
We are completed.
Nice.
You're
all the way step 7?
We're in the backside of everything.
Nice.
So we've been very fortunate in life. But the reality is that I said, we'll go down this. Mm-hmm. But there's 2 things I want to do. One, I want to go 300 miles an hour on the salt. Mm-hmm. I want to have a record over 300 miles an hour. Okay. There are more people who have climbed Mount Everest than are in the 200 club. Mm-hmm. Okay. 300 chapter, I think right now there's around 50 or 60 people. Mm-hmm. I don't have the financial means to go to the 400 club, but there's only 13 people there. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want a 300 record. It's a special hat. It's a blue hat. Black hats are for 400 mile an hour. Mm-hmm. I have a red hat. I want a blue hat.
Yeah.
Okay. That was one of them. And the second one was I want to win another series. Mm-hmm. I want to go for a national series or at least a semi-regional series and pick a class and win another one. Yeah. I just want to be able to say that, hey, it's not a fluke. I've been around doing this. And
so actually on that right there. So did you see Galat's schedule they put out for next year?
I did.
So that the streetcar stuff that they're doing. So the Extreme 28s, stock block new boost, stock block nitrous, and then street. Josh is planning on doing that as a point series.
Okay.
You know, with an actual king race and a big payout at the end of
it. I can tell you that I applaud for a lot of stuff that he's done. In some of this, it's going to really depend on how you do it with the racers and how they come out, and if we can convince them to stay with it and stuff. And you got to keep some of the problem is, I'll be the first one to say, like a stock block class. Okay, I don't like the stock block class rules. Most of them around here, I don't like it, and here's my reason I don't like it. A stock block 302, a stock block LS, a stock block Windsor, they're all in the same category. They're stock blocks. 400, small block Chevrolet, blah, blah, blah. The problem is the rules don't keep the power in check. So I'm a firm believer that a Ford 351 Windsor, an LS, a small block Chevrolet, any of the Dart and Dodge 360, stuff like that, the blocks were all in the same power range. But you need to keep them in a nitrous application somewhere around that 700, 750 range. And if you don't, you're going to have a lot of carnage. So a guy takes his money, he puts all this in there, and he breaks it, and then he can't race the rest of the year. So you don't have, your band is not there to play the concert. So to me, like in the nitrous stuff is plate, 90 jet, dash 4 line, 15 feet of it, you know, let's put some checks in. 1 solenoid, 128 orifice, you know, set it up. People like myself who understand how nitrous makes power. These are the heads you can run. AFR model, blah, 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 blah. You know, these are the heads you can run.
Here's the recipe.
And so what you're doing is, and honestly, in a combination like that, I mean, I can tell you, those are 520 to 50 combinations when people get them right. That's what they are. And
yeah, what I'm really hoping that he does, you know, because they've got that Extreme 28s, but he's got, I don't know if it's stock block or small block. I think it might be small block boost or whatever, right? My problem is there's a lot of cars that could technically fit into small block boost that should be in the Extreme 28s. So, like, well, a buddy of ours, you know, I'm going to throw him under the bus right here, Birch, right? That car should be in Extreme 28s. It should not be in small block boost, right? But it fits there.
Yeah.
Right.
But
so why
to me,
wouldn't he just enter that class, right, and just run over the entire class?
And so to me, it's because of rules. So the rules should be, if we're doing let's say a true small tire, small block boosted class, right? You don't want them to be in the extreme. 1 78 millimeter turbo. Okay. Now you're going, wow, that's going to be small. The reality is that you're going to put a turbo in there that's going to limit. And you don't just say a size. You say this model turbo from FSI or FIS, HPT, Precision. You know, these are the turbos that you can run. Right? Yeah, you can get any on 3. But the reality is...
just get it on 3. It's fine.
But the reality is that you know, here on Speed, all these guys, they offer kits, and you want to keep it more of a street style setup. Now, obviously, you go to somebody like me, and we can push that, right? But the other thing that I know keeps racing going that is not doing this, I hate to say it, but no time hurts racing.
It does. I would much rather have the boards on. The only reason I have been no time is because I race with no time guys.
That's right.
And anytime I've said my times, I get an angry phone call, and I get a, hey, you can't be saying your times because I run with you, and if you're telling your times, they can guess mine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, the fact you're behind me every time doesn't really matter. They just know you're slower than me.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
But the reality is that no time, in my opinion, if you're a true grudge racers, you're true, I'm talking about top guys running 30, 40,000 type races. You know what the other guy's got.
Yep.
You know what he's trying. You're trying to get a race where they either knock the tires off. I mean, because if you both run, you should both be in the same game. Okay. And for some reason, they think not showing times makes them something. What happens, in my opinion, in a lot of the local no time stuff, it gives a guy false sense that he's actually in the race. I'm sorry. You know, I know we were racing this year and a guy beat us. We spun and he beat us. But we blew by him at the finish line and he beat us by a couple thousandths of a second on his personal best. And we passed him at over 20 miles an hour. So because the scoreboards aren't lit, he's like, I'm in this race. No, you were not in this race. Actually, technically, you shouldn't even been in the same out there, because if we hit you with the speeds that we're going, somebody can get killed.
Yep.
And so the reality is that he gives that guy. And the other thing is, you have people building cars, and I'll use the nitrous small block around here. There's guys out here who have engines that are making 1,000 on motor, and they're tickling it with a 28 jet, running against guys who have a stock block. And say they have AFR heads and have got a 48 jet in it, and they're nuking it every fifth or sixth pass. And they're literally, this guy is toying with them.
Yeah.
And that's not racing. Racing to me is when you and I are heads up. We both doing all we can. We're out there trying to tickle another degree of timing in the launch to keep from spinning and stuff like that. And so you've got two guys who want the no time. The one guy who's running 15 mile an hour faster than everybody in the class. And the other guy, he doesn't know that he's 15 mile an hour slower. And, you know, he truly thinks everybody in the class is running 520s when everybody in the class is running 460s.
Yeah. I mean, a rule set I really like is World Cup finals, right? They have got that dialed in.
And it's taken them some time to get there.
You know, but you can see the difference, though. You can see and sometimes one combination will get ahead. Right?
And they reel them back in.
They reel it back in, right? You know, like they let Cletus in with a big block with gigantic twin turbos, you know, and he ran over the class, right? And they said, hey, by the way, next year you have to move up, right? Or you need to bring down the turbo size. You need to add weight. You need to, you know.
But that's what real racing organizations do. So you go to NHRA, right? When you had, back in the day, you had Ford, Pontiac, Chevrolet, everybody running pro stock. You had 6 different engine combinations, and they're all within a half a tenth.
Yep.
Now you only have one engine combination. Well, you got 2, but they're basically the same. But but the reality is that you go there and there's 16 cars, and the top qualifier versus the bottom qualifier is 0.5.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's so.
This was the first year I actually followed like Top Fuel because I was following Clay Milliken. And,
Okay.
I'm like, dude, those things are insane.
Yeah, I know the Proc family fairly well, and Austin Proc. I was glad to see what he did this year. But yeah, I follow them just because of the family ties, and it's insane the amount of money and time and everything those guys spend to win those. And when you look at these guys showing up, and you know, all over the world, they show up and they all run within half a tenth or a tenth of each other. It's insane because they got rules. I mean, like, you know, like I always laugh because people think Top Fuel is like unlimited, and it's so far from unlimited. I mean, you have blower drives, you have mag drives, everything is controlled. RPM, max RPM, gearing is controlled, tire diameter. I mean, everything is controlled. The fuel pumps are controlled.
The amount, the percentage of the fuel,
nitro. Oh yeah,
you know, the amount of nitro to, you know, that they don't control what the additive is. The 10% that's not nitro, but they all just do methanol.
Well, it has to be. It has to be. It is. It's methanol is the other one. But again, all that, like, they're up there with hydrometers, you know, and they're right on the edge the whole time. And you know, it is insane if you look at how much goes into making all those cars. And everybody gets there a different way. But yeah,
So going back
Yeah.
to our Galat series here for a little bit, I'm actually the one who made the rules for the street class.
Okay.
So Josh was going to let me run it at the end of this year, and then he canceled that last
Yep,
race.
yep.
I basically based all of my what he did tell me is you can't make a class that you can run in. Right. So he told me for streetcar, I'm not allowed in it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. To be fair,
me personally, no one should be in a class over rules. We've run into that with Bonneville, where a guy is in the class who's the technical.
Yeah, he's making the rules for the class that he's running in. It's like, well, of course, you just looked at your car and went, that.
Not just that, or when it comes to a question of like, I made a modification. Well, if I'm if I'm running the class and you make a modification, I think, oh my God, I didn't think about that. It's outlawed.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was his rule to me was you can't be in it. I was like, okay. And what we agreed on was actual street. Right? That's what he wanted me to call it. Actual street. What is where should it be? And I decided to base it on basically tire. It has to be a DOT rated tire. It can't be a hard tire. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
So like a ET Street SS, ET Street R.
Yeah.
Right.
And what you really
Pro
should do,
Radial is not a DOT tire.
That's right.
It is not a DOT tire.
It is not.
It has a DOT stamp on it and no rating, which meant the DOT looked at it and said no.
Yeah.
That is what that means.
Yeah.
It has to be able to complete a street cruise or an idle in the lanes like you'd have at a streetcar takeover, and it has to weigh something. And so for me, the number I picked was 3,700. Right?
Oh wow, that's heavy.
It's heavy, right? But think about how many that eliminates, right?
Well, a lot of people won't put the weight in the car.
Yeah, they're not going to put the weight in the car, right? So you would have guys that would look at it and go, like my car could do a street cruise, and I can put an ET Street R on it, and I can get it down on that, right? But it's a 3,000 pound car. They're not going to put 700 pounds in it. But all your modern S550 Mustangs that has a supercharger on it, right?
Yeah,
that's a street car. That is what it should be. It weighs about 3,800 pounds, right? Your Camaros, your Corvettes, a lot of your modern street cars, that's about the weight that they're at, right?
Yeah.
And if someone weighs
all the Dodgers are 4,500.
Yeah, I know, right? If someone weighs like 3,500, well, it's not too bad to add 100, 200 pounds to the car, right? But, and
2 nitrous bottles.
I didn't put any power adder limit on it. I didn't put any transmission limit on it. I was like, none of that crap. It does have to be registered and insured, right? And my only thing was, after every run, whether you win or lost, you go across the scale, right?
Yeah.
And Galat's easy for that. You just drive across the scale. If you're in weight, awesome, you move on. If all of a sudden, out of a miracle, your car lost 200 pounds,
you're out.
You're out.
And I'll tell you that it'll be a good start to see what kind of guys are going to show up. You're going to have to put some type of restrictions on power adders and stuff because there's always the one guy who has enough money or financial means or will max his credit cards or whatever, who's going to come with some retarded nitro blown, Hemi, and he's just, obviously that wouldn't do the idling cruise, but the reality is that you want it to be bolt-on class is what you're trying to get.
Well, see, the problem I have there is, though, bolt-on is like you could go to Hellion and get a bolt-on twin turbo kit, right? And that's going to get you down into a low 5-second spot.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Or you can go and get a bolt-on Whipple supercharger, which is going to get you to a high 5-second spot, right? And so there's a huge gap there. So if you say, okay, only one power adder, well, the twin turbo guys consider themselves single power adders.
Well, that's fine. But
I consider it dual power adders because it's twins. But so they'll say, okay, you can't throw nitrous on the supercharged car because that's a dual power adder. But the supercharged car really doesn't have a chance of getting down there.
So having been around a lot of very good street racing over the years, when I say street class, NSCA, NMCA stuff over the years, what you get into is specific model, specific turbo size, specific blower size and stuff. So look at NHRA in the FX class, right? They gave them blower drive. They give, if you're going to keep it around, because what happens is if I show up at a race and I've got something that I consider for the class, and I go out there and the guy runs a 520 and the best I've ever done is a 580, I'm done. I'm not going to show back up. I'm not going to show back up if I'm just going to get handed stuff. So you have to rein in every category. back in the day, racing motorcycles, ProStar had a race series of 600 cc. What they were trying to do is run factory 600cc motorcycles, the exact same rules for the engine that they ran in Weir and stuff, which is road racing stuff. So, hey, they got these rules, all these guys, the factory teams and stuff. You can buy these engine combinations, blah, blah, blah. We're going to put it in drag racing. Well, the problem is Suzuki was way out in front of everybody. Like, when I say way out in front of them, I'm talking about like a half second in front of everybody else.
Yeah.
Because they had more power and the transmission ratios and stuff were just right for drag racing. Okay. And since you had to run a stock transmission and stock stuff like that, the other guys were fine in road race because it was handling. See, in road racing, it's not a horsepower game.
Yeah.
It's a handling game. And so they made it.
The driver makes a huge difference.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, you take a Spencer and put him on a bike and he just runs circles around you on a stock bike and you've got a full-blown factory race bike. And he's because you're not a road racer and he is.
Whereas, like, theoretically in drag racing, the meat bag behind the wheel.
I refer to all of them as ballast.
Yeah, we're ballast. The only things we're good for is keeping it off the wall and hitting the tree. Right. But like, especially the level of car that you're in and like the level that my car is getting to, I am taking less and less things that I have to do in the car. Literally, it's like
yeah. Well, and I mean, like with the electronics we had today, I mean, you're not shifting it.
Nope.
You don't have to worry about wheelie control because it's going to do it. You don't have to worry about traction control. You don't have, like all that stuff's taken away from you and you're literally there for the unexpected. That's what you're there for. You're not there. I mean, and the biggest thing is like you were asking like how I got into it. I like the feel of acceleration. Okay. So when I get in a car and I hit the accelerator and I get pushed back in the seat, I like that feeling. I've had people who literally start swinging fist when they feel that. They're scared to death.
Their fight or flight comes in.
Yeah. They can't, I mean, there's people like I offer all the time to take them for a ride in one of the cars. Hell no, you'll kill me. I said, dude, I'm not going to go out here on the road and do something stupid. But even when you roll into the throttle on something that makes 1,200 at the tire and just roll into it, we're probably 700-800 horsepower. And,
I'm going to ask for a pause real quick. I got to use the restroom.
That's fine. Yeah. I'll do the same thing.
Yep. And we're back.
Okay.
All right. So I'm trying to remember where you were at, brother. We're talking about rules. We're talking about combinations.
So yeah, back to you've really got to make specific rules for specific combinations to keep a class around, because that is the only way to do it. What you have to do is either have an index or you got to do it. And so part of the problem with what you're going to run into with that class, which I do like those kind of classes, is a 3,700 pound car with 1,500 horsepower can go really fast. And it's not really going to be much of a street car when it's got a 25.2 cage in it. I know I drive them.
Yeah.
And, and like I said, is honestly, we weigh 3,200 already. It's not much for me to put 500 pounds in it. And it could really go fast. But the reality is that you need to start and see who's going to show up.
Yeah.
Because what you need in any racing organization is a core group of racers. Okay. What I've threatened to do is put a small block nitrous class together, invite only.
There you go.
All right. If you want to keep no time, that's fine. I'm going to watch every one of your ETs. And when you step out, I'm going to come over and hand you a lead trophy or hand you a jet restriction or things like that. You look at some of the classes that run around the U.S. and stuff. There's some classes at some of Ducks races and stuff like that where you've got small block nitrous cars with like a 32 jet limit. And these guys, I mean, what happens is you start putting jet limits on them, so then they start building badder motors. I mean, they start going, they got a high port that turn in 9,700 RPMs and stuff. You've got to understand that racers are always going to try to go around rules. That's what we do. That's what
hand us a set of rules, and we are looking for the gray area.
Well, I mean, if it's not in the book, it's not illegal.
Yep.
Some of the guys back in the day used to say that about pro stock. It doesn't say you can't use nitrous. It does say turbos aren't allowed and superchargers aren't allowed, but it doesn't say anything about nitrous. Some of them may have gotten caught. It was not in the intent of the rule. It does now say no nitrous oxide allowed. It didn't back in the day. But, racers they always want an advantage. The reality is that like in round around racing, they have claimer motors and stuff like that. I've always thought that'd be really interesting in drag racing. If at the end of the week, I could buy your motor for $1,500.
Yeah.
Yeah. not necessarily get the tune, but get the engine. I think people would be surprised at what's in really some of the motors. And like I'll say, like Purple Rain, I help those kids. I say kids, hell, they're older, they're adults, but I help those guys. And what's in that motor ain't nothing special. But they don't mind testing. They don't mind listening about gearing and converters and stuff like that. And they go and choose the right races. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that motor's not something special.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've heard people, you know, say what they think's in it and stuff, and I just laugh. I mean, it's nowhere near what they think it is, you know. But the reality is that there's always going to be the racer. If you gave everybody a claimer motor, if you gave everybody the exact same motor like they do in round racing, like they have these GM crate motors, and you show up, like everybody has their engine, they're sealed, and you reach in and grab an ECM and plug it in.
Yep.
You can't change the tune or anything else. They're trying to keep the power out of it. The reality is okay, so be it. But if I go to the track 20 times and I test, I'm still going to beat you. Mm-hmm. And that's what it comes down to is some people are going to find a way. Like I love going to like what I call national level small tire racing, where you see a guy that's got a 32 jet limit on a small block and he's running a 103 short time on a 3,200 pound car. Right. And like, guys around here are like, yeah, man, I just busted a 131 and you got a 48 jet and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, you know, you put a set of rules out there and all of a sudden people get ET with short times. Mm-hmm. They get ET with transmission gearing. They get ET, you know, and, you know, around here, I in the last couple of years, I don't know where it comes from, but gears in cars, like everybody's got like a 355, 373. And I'm like, dude, you need like 450s in this thing. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, man, you know,
I mean, I've been rocking a 373 because that's what came in the car, you know, and it didn't break. And now I'm on an IRS car, you know, that's one of the things that's held the car back for a while, you know, and, you know, it is what it is as far as that goes. You know, it's an IRS car.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting. I'll be glad to see how these classes roll out. Mm-hmm. And if Josh being the lead of it, if in classes when somebody starts stepping out, if they slap that hand, or do they lose 20 competitors, right? So what happened, and I look at some of the races around here, so like when Kinston started up little 252 and stuff, man, you were like 30, 40 cars out there. And at the end, it got to be where it was like 5 or 6 cars, right? Well, the reality is that when you let combinations come in, when they started prepping the track, when they weren't prepping the track, the cars were limited by the track. So you had turbo cars that were like run big mile an hour, but same ET as nitrous cars and everything else, and some small blocks where nitrous could actually be competitive. But when they started prepping the track to where you could go a 1.0 short time, the turbo cars were so far out in front of everybody stopped showing up. And that's not good for racing. No. You know, so it'll be interesting. I really applaud what he's done so far. If the track prep is there and they can get a consistent turnout of people.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna run a small tire event, you know, and this is me talking to Josh now, if you are listening, either have it be a radial event or a slick event. Trying to run both at the same time, the prep is just not going to be there, and no one's going to be happy.
Yeah, neither group's going to be happy.
You know,
it's going to be too tight for slick. Sometimes it's going to be too non-sticky for a radial. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Like you either need to have a radial event or a slick event. And by the way, you know, I know some other people in North Carolina. David's talking about like a slick race. I think it doesn't matter what you do. You just got to be consistent at it. And again, go to some races. There's outside North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and even Florida. There's a lot of slick racing. For some reason, we live in this little bubble. But I'm like, dude, you go up northeast, and it slicks everywhere. Yeah, they don't radial prep tracks.
Yeah, so and like my main thing above anything else is the event needs to be run well, right? Except for a car breaking and oiling down the track, I don't see any reason that there should be more than an hour to an hour and 10 minutes between rounds. For your class, right?
Well, let me tell you one other thing is number of classes is a problem.
You need to have like 4 or 5.
I would say if you're doing realistically, if you've got the right car count, 2 to 3 for a one-day event is going to be about all. Because the reason I say that is let's assume that you can get 16 cars a field,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's what you want. You want at least 16 cars because that's a good round of racing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants at least 2 or 3 rounds of racing, right?
Yeah.
And so 16 gives you 4, right? 16 to 8, 8 to 4, 4 to 2. We're down the list.
Yep.
Okay. So if you get 16 cars per field and you average 3 minutes just for the shakedown and or qualifying, if you have times on your qualifying, because number one wants to be number one, you know. But if you allow everybody 2 passes in 3 classes, that's about an hour a class.
Mm-hmm.
That's 3 hours to get through 1 round of qualifying. Okay? So 3 hours, another 3 hours. You're 6 hours in.
Mm-hmm.
How long does a football game last? About 3.5 hours.
Yep.
That's about the time that people kind of start losing interest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you're going to have 6 hours in qualifying. Then you're going to have, you know, obviously it gets quicker every round because you got less and less cars. But you've got to go through, if you have 8, 8, and 8, right? That's an hour and a half to run first round.
Yep.
You're 7.5 hours in and you haven't had an oil down. You hadn't had anything. So having run a lot of national events, you know, been involved in NHRA and stuff like that, what people don't realize is all those super stock cars, they're fillers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And if they have oil downs or something in pro stock, guess who doesn't get to run?
Super stock.
That's right. So what happens is like when it says qualifying at 1 o'clock for pro stock, like you leave your pits at like 12:30 and you're in the back of the lanes. And at 1 o'clock, it's going to start.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not in the lanes, guess what? They don't care.
And that is something I really want to see promoters and tracks start doing. If you call a class and somebody doesn't show,
Tough luck.
tough luck, right?
It's not just that, but it's like, so I go to a lot of events. Obviously in North Carolina, I go to a lot of events. And they'll say track goes hot at 10. I'm there at 8:30 because I want my customer ready to go. Or I'm driving, I won't be ready to go. At 10 o'clock, they're starting to get stuff out to work on the track.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm a spectator, I came here to see racing at 10 o'clock. And
Not the National Tractor event.
And so it really starts around 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock. Well, remember what we talked about? Rounds of shakedown, everything else. Next thing you know, it's 9, 10 o'clock at night. We've got 1 round of racing down. The dues coming in. I mean, you're never going to finish this event. So you never get a winner. You never get pay. I mean, you know, they split in the pots. Stuff
Yeah.
like, and the reality is that fans go, I won't go back to that. Is it the racetrack or is it the promoter?
Yeah.
Okay. But I know that NHRA, when it says that the last round of qualifying is at 6 o'clock for top fuel, I can tell you everybody will make dinner reservations at 7:30.
Yep. Well, and I also, me personally, I also don't think that the track needs to cater to the racer as far as, okay, we're going to push off first round until the weather's perfect. Right? No. If you can't detune your car enough to get down the track, that's not the track's fault. That's your fault. Right? Now, I get it. We're in North Carolina. Middle of the day passes are hot. Right? And your car's going to be slower. It's going to be slower.
Yeah,
Just
fine.
like, you know, I'm going to bash on Braxton because he's easy, you know, to bash on a little bit. One of his races last year, they didn't start first round until 10 o'clock at night.
That's right.
Because the track wasn't ready, you know, and then 3 pairs of cars went down. The third pair of cars that went down, one shot a freeze plug out of the side of the block. Race is done.
So you had everybody there all day long and they've got to see nothing.
Yep.
And so again, I'm 100% with you is like, I like scoreboards on.
Yep.
Because I think that it really tells somebody like when they're jumping up and down at the starting line, should they have been?
Yeah.
Right. You know, just because it did a giant wheel stand at 300 foot doesn't mean it went fast. You know, I think that most fans would honestly truly be dumbfounded at no time racing. The car that just kind of went down the track probably ran the quickest of anybody. The car that was out there wheeling it's not going good ET. It looks impressive, scares the hell out of people, but it doesn't do anything. Yeah. And so to me, I like scoreboards on. You know, I like scoreboards on because I like to see 60 footers.
Yeah.
I like to see the incrementals going down the track. But even if you're not going to do that, the expectation of the racer having your car there and stuff. But like, I have not seen, maybe somebody's doing it, I just don't see it, a flyer that has times of things.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have start, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is that, like, I know when I go to an NHRA race, I want to see qualifying. Okay, so I go on Fridays and Saturdays because I want to see people dig down and try to throw everything at it and see if they can get down the track, right? Because I want to see that national record. Nobody's doing a national record in eliminations.
Nope. They're doing what they have to do to get down the track.
That's right. So when, you got Jimmy Prock up there and he's like, you know what? We need those points so that we can move up one spot in the standings, and I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at it. Either I'm going to blow the tires off or I'm going to set a national record, right? And there's points for that. I enjoy that, okay? But the eliminations, like, I know all they're going to do is put A to B pass in there and let the driver do his job, unless they just come and get somebody they can't handle.
Yep.
So.
One event actually coming up next year, Rockingham again, is Streetcar Bragging Rights, right? And they do that. They have a schedule for how things are. And they also go, you're a racer, here's the WhatsApp group that you need to be in. When we're calling you up, it's going to be there. We're doing it over the speakers. It's going to be there. You have no excuses for that you didn't hear it, and we're not waiting. Right?
Well, I'll tell
Because
you,
when it's time for your class, we run your class.
have you been to many NHRA races?
I have never been to an NHRA race.
So one of the other things they do is if you're pro stock, you pit in pro stock. You don't have, a pro stock here, a top fuel here. Everybody's in the class together.
Yeah.
If you run this class, you're there. Now, I used to mess that up because a good friend of mine, Jim Munson, we raced out of my trailer, and we had a Super Street and a Limited Street car. But because we ran out of our trailer, they would always put Limited Street beside Super Street.
Nice.
So that we could do that.
Yeah.
But the reality is that, most people don't have two cars in a trailer anymore. That's not very common. If they do, they're in the same class, so it doesn't matter. But the reality is pitting them together, having a set schedule, have everything there. And, and weather, I'm with you, man. I mean, hey, if we don't want to race in the middle of the sun, then let's start the race at 5 o'clock. But let's start the race at 5 o'clock. But you're only going to have one class.
Yep.
Maybe two.
Yep.
Because you're not going to be able to complete it. And so what happens is you go to a lot of these races and there's 4 or 5 classes, and then they drag it out and they never get completed. And how do you do points when you don't do that? How do you do payout when you don't do that? And then fans, they get tired of that. I mean, I know if I paid $100 for my family at the gate and I got to see 5 or 6 passes, I'm not coming back to your stuff.
Yeah. One really cool thing that Bragging Rights does is, at the end of the night, there's a fireworks show. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But there's also an active fireworks show during the finals, right? And so when the cars do the burnouts, they just have fire go off, right? And then one of the cool things they do is the incrementals have their own fireworks that go off. So I that's so cool. So like they hit the tree, and whoever broke that beam first, their fireworks go off first, right? So you can see going down as one car gets ahead of the other. I think that's just super. Like it, as a racer and as a spectator, I'm going, that's cool. That's worth showing up to stay for the finals to see that.
Oh yeah. And again, it's the show. I'd say the thing that blows my mind more than anything is what racers pay. Now, I understand the bracket stuff. I do. I mean, because they are putting their own money in the pot. But like a big 275 race, 28 275 race, and you get these top guys, right? And you're asking them to pay $500 to enter. And I'm like, I've never been to a concert where the band paid to play. And so I'm sort of on the other side of like, hey, if there's fans there, then the racers are your entertainment. And so, but right now, the reality is the racers are the fans. And that's part of the problem. So when you get to like, see, you may be too young to remember Nopi.
The name sounds familiar.
So that was a big, dude, they used to have like, it was an import racing series. They'd have like wet t-shirt contests and bubble pools, and they had all this stuff going on. It got to the point, because I had some friends that raced in it, and I went and helped. It got to the point where it was a show, not a race. Yeah. But I can tell you, money-wise, oh my gosh. I mean, they were paying out big stuff. But the reality is that the stuff on the side, because a lot of people, contrary to what we as racers think, the majority of people in the public have no idea what a given combination is. You know, I always like Al Tucci when he announces. One of the reasons I like Al is because he knows facts about cars and he helps try to educate. Brian Loans at NHRA. Brian used to own the ECTA down here at Maxton. Okay, he's a full-time. He's been in racing his entire life. David Freiberger does the same thing. These guys actually know, and they try to educate the fans so that they understand what's going on. So when somebody gets beat on a hole shot, they explain that. And so
on the whole shot, you know.
And then explain it. That means he leaves early. You know, he left when the light came on. It's a race to the finish, not necessarily an ET game, even though that plays into it. But yeah, you know, there's no perfect solution to any of this. There isn't. But if you get 16, 17 cars, there used to be a race series in the United States. I won't go into where it was because a lot of people get offended that I'll even talk about it. But they had like 28 guys that were racers. Okay. I used to go out there and tune some of these guys. They were good friends of mine. We'd go out in some Midwest United States, but we'd go out and tune them. Well, those 28 guys all agreed that they wouldn't run quicker than like 490. It's a 10-5 series. Okay. Dude, they went out. They guaranteed 18 cars at every race. They had a schedule. Like you and I would be next weekend or whatever. Schedule. They go out and race. It was a gentleman's agreement. They wouldn't go quicker than this. He had turbo, nitrous, small block. He had all common. Wouldn't go quicker than this. They ran that series for about 12 years. They would pack the stands.
Because it was close. It was tight. It was
the guy who could only run a 5.0 with his lungs hung out felt like he had a chance, even though he was running a twin turbo 540 cubic inch motor. But that guy wouldn't go quicker than 490. It eventually fell apart because all those racers started running national series. And they didn't want to back their stuff down when they came back. And so they would go out there and run, and they'd blow everybody away, and then hey, you're out of here. But wow, he won't let me race because I'm quicker, you know. And it got into some of that. But the reality was for about 10 years, it was perfect because they always had a schedule of who was going to be there. So for the fans, they knew there was going to be 16 cars qualified, right? Yeah. And fans want to know that if they want to see Nate race, Nate's going to be there. And they'd list so-and-so and so, you know what I mean? You know who's going to be there. It worked out good. And so I think that, again, you have to understand is we want to go the quickest we can. That's our nature. But the reality is if there's nobody in the stands, there's not going to be money in it. Yeah. So it's going to come, I mean, you got to play both sides of that. Yeah.
So. It has to be a show. It has to be something that spectators want to see. Yeah. Right? It has to be entertaining, you know, and it's, you know, it's part of the reason nobody likes it. No, I don't want to say nobody. It's part of the reason spectators don't show up for bracket racing. Right? Yes. You watch one round of bracket racing.
You've seen it all.
You've seen it all, right? It's okay.
Extremely competitive, but not entertaining.
It's not entertaining. Yeah. You know, I think when you're coming up in racing, bracket racing is actually probably a good place to start because it teaches the fundamentals. It will pound the fundamentals into you because if you don't get them right, you're not going to make it past round one.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but I like list racing. I like heads up list racing, you know, and I'm trying to think of the right way to put it. There's something very satisfying about putting a combination together with a rule set and then being the top dog.
As you said, as I said earlier, my wife and I said, this is one of the things, win a real series, not a come in with a top fuel motor running the guy who runs a stock block class. I mean, run the amount of time when I ran national series, you know, a week before the car's finished, it's ready to go. You're putting it in the trailer. You're loading up your spare stuff. You're filling all the nitrous bottles. You're getting, I mean, the amount of time you do in prep. You get the other set of tires. You're measuring for rollout. You're doing everything. Oh, I've got that converter. So Friday qualifying, we're going to run that new converter and see if it helps us. And if it doesn't, then we're going to change it out overnight so we can be ready for Saturday qualifying. It's, and not to be funny, but there's people, I could literally fill this table with names of people that are still in my phone today that I raced with 30 years ago because, hey, are you going to be at the race? Yeah, I'm going to be at the race. We're going to this hotel. Let's get together. And hey, because we had a schedule, last round of qualifying's at 6:00. Well, let's go to, you know, the restaurant, so-and-so in that town and stuff. You know, I mean, you build a family in racing, and there's people, I'm going to be at PRI here in a couple of weeks. And there's people that I'm going to run into that I don't see, but once in a blue moon, but we're going to go hang out because we used to race with each other, you know. And it'd be funny, but like this weekend, my college roommate is going to stop by. I hadn't seen him in 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to stop by because he's back in this area.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing with racing.
Yeah.
You know, people pick up the phone and call me. Somebody hit me on Facebook. I know that's probably not what you do, but I hit me on Facebook, and it's like, holy crap, that's a name I haven't heard in forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they'll pick up the phone, and you know, they're friends. They're still friends.
Yeah.
But we ran heads up as hard as we could, and turn around and have dinner. You know.
Yeah, and like I want more of that. I don't understand the guys that
hate each other.
They have to take it personally. If you beat them, they take it personally, and like
that's a grudge thing. It's not. It's not. You don't see that in professional racing.
Yeah, I like you know, I like good showmanship. I like the shit talking sometimes. You know, where you know you say stuff to each other in the lanes to try and throw the other guy off a little bit or something, right? But at the same time, it's like, look, when I'm racing, I always figure out, you know, when you pull chips or whatever, right? I always go find the other guy, shake his hands, and you know, and I always ask a couple questions. One,
how you on stage?
How are you going to stage? Do you want to go in first, or do you want me to go in first? Right? And I'll say, it takes me like
X seconds
on my supercharger, right? It's like it takes me instantly to spool up, right? So, do you want me to go in first, or do you want to go in first, right? And then I will also say, if I get squirrely, I'm going to get out of it. I expect you to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and let me tell you one thing that's happened around here that I've seen a lot. We've had that conversation with people. Okay, I'm going to go in second, blah, blah, blah. They go in double bowl. That's how you end up with forget him. And the reality is that, you know, it depends on where you are in religion, but you have to say, is I'm just going to let that go. I know that's somebody who can't tell the truth. And I'm going to run my game. And, you know, we've had people just get, I've had some, because I tune a lot of different people. So racers and their personalities come out. I've had people literally say, oh, I'll go in second because my stuff spools good and stuff like that, right? Well, their car does spool good. The guy goes in, we pre-stage, they pre-stage. This guy bumps in, and my guy hangs out for like 3 or 4 seconds. All right, dude, you told him you were going to go right in. The problem is he's sitting over there just, I mean, he's on
cooking his stuff.
Yeah, but he's pissed. And the guy that I'm helping goes, well, I mean, I went on in. I mean, I got 7 seconds. Dude, the conversation that you had with him back in the lanes told me the second that you saw him going in, you were going to start. That's what I heard. That's what he heard. Well, I didn't say that. No, you did. That's what you said. Yeah. No, I said I would go in second if he wanted me to. No, you know, that guy was having trouble spooling his car. It took him like 6 seconds to get it spooled. So as soon as he was up spooled, you needed to be in so that he wasn't hung out for another 6 or 7 seconds. And, you know, you see that kind of stuff. And to me, like you talked about bracket racing, part of the problem right now in small tire racing is, I would say 50% of the people, this is the only racing they've ever done. And so they don't understand double bulbing. They don't understand, you know, reaction times. They don't understand a lot. They got money, they bought a car, and they think they're racers. And so they tick people off. You know, you can't go run an NHRA pro stock race until you've done other stuff. Yeah.
Now, I will admit I have taken advantage of other guys' setups. So, like, Streetcar Takeover is a great example. I managed to win the mild class the last time I did it, right? In the finals, it was me and my Supercharged Nitro setup versus a Corvette, and it was a 427 with a gigantic turbo on it.
So it takes forever to spool.
It takes forever to spool, right? And I asked the guy, do you want me to go in first, or do you want to go in first? And he said, you know what? You go in first. I'll spool up, and I'll bump in, right? And he said, would you mind letting me pre-stage first? Sure. That's perfectly fine, right? Now, as soon as he pre-staged, I pre-staged full stage. Boom, boom, right? I'm right in, right?
Now he's got 7 seconds. He's on the clock,
he's
baby.
On that, and so, like, in that case, I'm like, okay. I
messed with him.
And it did. His reaction time was 0.5, right? My reaction time was 0.04. You know, I managed to win that race because by the time he let go of the button,
You were already half track.
I was 4 cars out there,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
He did track me back down, and I did
But too
only
late.
beat him by that much.
Doesn't matter. You beat
right?
him.
But like in that case, I'm like, I don't think that was dirty on my side because I just looked at my opponent and went, it's going to take you 6.5 seconds to spool that thing up.
And again, that's where combinations play into how you race, right?
Yeah.
But like there's guys around here that like when they run a turbo car, right? They do everything in their power to mess with a turbo car. When I say that, the nitrous guy, they'll like pre-stage it, or they won't stage or won't pre-stage, or, they play around, or, and what I try to do is I tell customers, I can't change you and you can't change me. Okay. So we're going to have our combination where it does what we need it to do. And once, let's face it, a lot of our methanol cars, I can sit there for 30 minutes. It's not gonna hurt it. I can just sit there and idle. I mean, it's I know it doesn't have water in it, but it literally, we can run them so fat. They just sort of sit there and do nothing except milk the oil. Okay. Yeah. But there's got to be, from the promoters and tracks, once both cars are pre-staged, there's got to be a clock, or we're sending both of you back. Okay. At NHRA, they have some stuff like that. Like when the starter tells you to go in, if you don't go in, they'll lose both of you.
Yep.
Somebody gets a bye next round because you're an idiot. And you got to do some stuff like that because, that, or what I tell customers to do is, listen, man, he wants to start hanging out, go on in. Going in. You race you, just like you were on the tree by yourself and nobody was in that other lane. Once you're both pre-stage, it's your race. If he goes in, you got to go in. Go in. I'm not melting my transmission down. Okay, if he hangs you out, we have yours cool enough when it came up here. It's not going to burn the transmission up right now, and we're going to take a little longer to cool it down, but we're going to be okay. But, they just, yes, they have 7 seconds at most tracks. Some of them are 5, depending on what it is. But to me, you got to be careful putting a 5-second tree in there because then the guy with a turbo car that takes 5 seconds to spool, he's done. But again, race your race and be a gentleman in this because the reality is when you play games with people, it's going to come back to haunt you. Karma is an absolute nightmare. It'll come back and bite you when you least want it to.
The other thing I've always tried to do, and sometimes at big places it doesn't work out, but after I race somebody, I always try to go find them afterwards and shake their hand.
You need to
go, whether I lost or whether I won. I go shake their hand and go, hey, good race.
So, I feel extremely privileged in life to have raced a bunch of different things from Bonneville to, I've been out there, and Danny Thompson, Mickey Thompson's son, was running a car that was in the same class as us. Well, they had qualified at like 252 miles an hour. We qualified at like 256 miles an hour. We had no boost in it. I mean, like 4 or 5 pounds of boost. And they had a mod motor, a 5.4 mod motor, hadn't been the same displacement as us, supercharger. So I knew they were running everything they had. Our car was way more aerodynamic than their car. So I went to Danny, and I said, hey, y'all run in front of us. Because the way Bonneville records work is if we both qualify, you and I both qualify, if you run before me and you set the record at, say, 255, because it's an average between your two runs, and then I go out and go 270, and my average is higher, you still get a record because you did it before me.
Okay.
If I run 270 and then you run behind me and you would have beat the record, you don't beat the record because I have now physically set it higher than your average. So gentleman's rule is if somebody's slower qualifying, let them run first so they can get a record, get in the 2 club and everything else. I went up, told Danny, I said, hey, run in front of us. The guy that was building his engines that year, I won't mention the guy's name. He was big in the mod motor stuff, but he's like, we don't need your pity. We're going to run all over. And I'm like, dude, I'm just telling you, I have not even cracked the boost on this thing. I'm going to go out here and go about 280, 290, and it's going to blow this record slam out of the water. We literally like coasted through at 256 miles an hour. We were out of the throttle. We're going to destroy this record. You think that, blah, blah, blah. Just guy was a total jerk. Danny was not that way at all. Danny was 100% like, hey, we'll go first. We ended up, the guy who owned the car was like, you know what, we'll put it. I said, no, let's just hang back. So we hung back. We let them run. They got to about the 3 mile, through the rods out of the motor. We went out and pushed the record about 30 miles an hour higher. And so he would have gotten it if he got it. But the reality is that's what you do as a racer. You look for the guy. You try getting him something. When he's a jerk, honestly, we were about this close to going, you know what, let's go in front of him. We didn't. We stayed back. But that's part of racing is a family, and you tick people off. Everybody's got Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. There's people who won't show up at Thanksgiving because that family event.
Family drama, family things, you know.
Yeah. But
well, man, I'm looking at it. I think we're about an hour and 30 minutes, an hour and 40 minutes into this. I feel like we have just barely scratched the surface of stories that we got here, man.
I enjoy it, man. It's been good.
This has been a whole lot of fun. We're definitely going to have you back.
That's not a problem, man. I'm not that far away, and obviously we can plan something out and come up with a good subject. Obviously, you'll see some announcements at PRI. You'll see some stuff coming up, and we got Sick Week in January. And you have to come up with something and see something. Let me know. We'll stop by, man. It's been a great night.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I'm planning on going to PRI next year. That's on my list to go to.
My son, it'll be his first time going with us this year, so.
Yeah,
he's 22, and it'll be his first time getting to go to it. So,
is there anywhere you'd want people to follow you?
No, man,
Facebook,
I'm not really.
Instagram, the shop.
You can just look at me on Facebook. I've got to get some stuff going because I don't do a lot. You can usually follow us through the 7-second Chevy too, but it's not 7 seconds anymore. But you'll see us post on there, and normally just Facebook, Paul Powell. I mean, we post our racing stuff up there. You'll probably see some stuff for my kids. Like, I mean, when my kids do well, you'll see that. But reality is that when we go on drag week, when we go on sick week, when we do things like that, we post stuff from there. I hate to say, but around here I don't get to post a lot because a lot of grudge guys. I'm not going to post a video of one of my grudge guys.
Yeah.
Kind of gives up what they do. But you'll see us, if it's not grudgy guys, I'll always post it. I enjoy, seeing y'all guys at Galat, and always, I like to help people. It's one of the things that, I'll help anybody I can at the track. So
yeah. Well, as we're getting emotional damage closer to running here, that's the name of my car.
I know it is.
I might be reaching out to you, getting some of your advice on some stuff, because this version of the car really is a big collaboration with a lot of people to get it across the finish line and get this thing done. And
I will tell you, the one thing to always remember is that thank those people. Be there for them. You're going to, in this business, you're going to have people who are your best friend today, and you won't talk to them for years. But if you can help them out, you do along the way. Some of the people I've mentioned tonight, hey, man, the one thing about this world is somebody who's considered the top may drift off for personal reasons, family reasons, business reasons, or whatever, but they're still in your phone. And a lot of times they can still help you out.
Yeah.
And so just always remember that. And I'll say that, keep the family strong.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, brother, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, man.
As always, guys, you can follow me at Nate the Fast Plumber on Instagram and on my YouTube channel. Ernie is 105 Life. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button for this channel. Share it with a friend or an enemy. Either way, we're trying to get this thing growing a little bit more than it has been. But brother, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, man.
Guys, we're going to see you next time.
All right.